you geeks. Well, it's been 4 months and one accidental reread of the entire Wheel of Time, but I finally finished C.S. Lewis's space trilogy, ending with The Hideous Strength, which I will now review as the other ones by telling you guys all the things that no one ever told me about this book. This is an exciting video for this concept because everything that anyone has ever told me was from you wonderful geeks down in my comments section. So I really do appreciate you guys, and now we'll roast you for my own amusement. Starting with...
Oh no, not again.
RTC Geek was certainly bummed that hideous strength does not actually happen in space. The third one is the worst because it takes place on Earth. Lame, and feels like a standalone book that Lewis wrote and didn't publish and forgot about. So I'm sure many readers are bummed that in this book, the professor barely leaves a college just for the next town over, with college politics percolating throughout the entire book. This gave me a unique experience of PTSD. The first pages of this book spiked a terrible remembering of my days in college and university, with the odious act of politicking the student body and fighting between the factions, and the efficacy of being acquainted with the student body president.
These wounds won't seem to heal.
It's important to distinguish between the fantastical Braxton University tragedy and the actual state of higher education in the US, at least. I highly doubt that any US university ever was even intended to house the equivalent of Merlin's grave and Merlin's well and the philosophical implications it implies. Rather, Lewis goes much more practical and pokes fun at how the professors idealize the NICE's ever-updating notice board, the pragmatometer, as it were. And so any university that incorporates the internet is guilty, in Lewis's eyes at least, of selling the soul of the university for the latest modern technology. This is the problem with literally applying Lewis to daily life, because he drew lines in the sand and society has blown right past them. So, as a talking head on a website whose promotes culture based on algorithmic, that is, scientific value...
Now what?
Number 2, suspense. Upon picking up this book, I'm sure that many readers were disappointed that it doesn't follow our old friend Ransom. He doesn't even show up to like a quarter of the way through. Our old friend Divine does go dashing about early under a new name. Yet there was something exciting about following 2 new characters on a new type of story. The first 2 books follow Ransom and his journey from Earth and back again. So the only driving question for those books on a plot level is, will he return? In Paralandra, this is answered in the 2nd chapter.
And don't bother to deny it.
Well, then I won't.
I'm speechless.
With Lewis, there is always the promise of a happy ending, but in That Hideous Strength, there is some real question as to what a happy ending would be. Will Mark and Jane save the college? Is the college worth saving? Will Jane find sanctuary in Logers? Will Jane ever reunite with her husband? Should she reunite with her husband? Will Mark actually get out of Bellbury? All of these questions could be answered yes or no, and still Lewis would find a happy ending. So I was actually enthralled and invested in discovering these plot-driven questions in addition to the otherwise mostly philosophical nature of this work. Number 3, ample-chested women. Speaking of philosophy, Brian McCure 2220 did warn me that if you ever get to that Hideous Strength, the last book, I recommend reading The Abolition of Man first. It's a book review, philosophical discussion written by C.S. Lewis that inspired him to create the book. It's really short. And he was right. In The Abolition of Man, Lewis describes the actual modern man, the man without any moral formation and who is utterly feckless and without honor. This man will sacrifice whatever it takes to get into that inner ring of society.
Why is this party cooler exactly? Because of all the ponies we're keeping out.
That is, men like Mark. Men without chests, according to Lewis. But I think that in that Hideous Strength, Lewis gives us the solution. Ample-chested women. Women like Jane, who Lewis describes as, men call a woman voluptuous when she arouses voluptuous feelings in them. Jane's body, soft though firm and slim, it was so exactly to Mark's mind that it was all but impossible for him not to attribute to her the same sensations which she excited in him. Okay. That Hideous Strength explores the philosophical connotations of my observation in Paralandra, which is that Lewis finds women's breasts a wonder. In his darkest hour, for love of Jane's voluptuousness, Mark is able to overcome his desire for the inner ring and choose something resembling the right for the first time in his life. And he does this without realizing that over in Logres, Jane is learning from the other merry wives of Logres how to better love him. Interestingly, Lewis doesn't exclusively limit women to the role of wives at Logres. He does include Miss Ironwood, a professional doctor who is well educated and thoughtful. Everything about Miss Ironwood was big.
Big chest!
Lewis does give us one important caveat to the general goodness of voluptuous women in Miss Hardcastle, as a good woman for Lewis requires the proper support, which Miss Hardcastle notably lacks. When she had finished, she removed her tunic and flung it on the sofa, revealing a huge torso, uncorseted, as Bill the Blizzard had complained, rank, floppy, and thinly clad, such things as Rubens might have painted in delirium. Her jocular humor, her lack of emotional empathy, and her quick resorting to violence, which she enjoys. These, even for Lewis, would be distasteful in a man and absolutely monstrous in a female. Given that, I do wonder how Lewis would react to my promotion of this video, though he does allow for Mother Dimble to have a Shakespearean level of humor.
And so from ore to ore, we ripe and ripe. And then from ore to ore, we rot and rot.
So it's possible Lewis went to hie me off to a nunnery. Number 4, subtlety. Oh, he has a wound that won't heal, you say? Fascinating. At least it's the wound of Achilles and not Christ, so he's got that going for him in originality. However, Ransom now has an ageless face, you say? I really do need to read more Arthur. Numenor, number 5. That hideous strength in the hero's cycle of the grander space trilogy is really Ransom's return home, the return to the familiar, to find that he himself has changed and it along with it, such that they can never be truly reacquainted again. In other words, it's the scouring of the Shire.
In your heart, you begin to understand. There is no going back.
Curiously, Lewis includes wither good morning, that's a verb now, Mark, in the 2nd chapter when Mark rudely demands that Wither give him a contract and define his relationship with the Institute. The arrogance.
Or perhaps you mean to say that you feel good on this particular morning. Or are you simply stating that this is a morning to be good on?
Though Tolkien's Shire could be saved at the end, his Numenor could not. It, dancing bears and all, was swallowed by the sea in a singular day of misfortune. My first read-through, I found it odd that Tolkien, the director, Ransom, would have been scared of Merlin with his ancient Numenorian magics, as in the Akalabeth, it makes it quite clear that only the faithful Numenorians survive. But then, on my second read, I realized that Sauron survived the fall of Numenor, and that Merlin was sleeping under a mountain of sorts, waiting for the right time to return in history.
And the ring of power perceived. Its time had now come.
So, the director's wariness makes sense. Lastly, Lewis's inclusion of Numenor in that hideous strength makes me wonder 2 things. First, does Amazon's Queen Mariel remind anyone of Lewis's earthly Venus? But overall, I rather think that Amazon adapting the fall of Numenor was a rather, nice idea. Number 6. Hell's Bureaucracy. Coyote Wherefore 4380 was kind enough to tell me that hideous strength, though, has some profound insight into conspiracies to enact change and control the narrative from behind the scenes, and how some people are driven to commit evil acts out of a desire to be part of this inner circle. Which was a somewhat accurate warning, though it could have easily applied to the Screwtape Letters. In the Screwtape Letters, hell is also a bureaucracy, but it's somewhat meritorious, where if you succeed, you get rewarded, and if
they fall as Lucifer fell, the flames.
The third person, somewhat omniscient perspective does allow the reader to see what the superiors of the NICE do when their underlings actually succeed. They dispose of them, all for the cause of the infernal machine.
I'm betting the Joker told you to kill me as soon as we loaded the cash.
No. I killed the bus driver.
Or they induct them into the higher, more exclusive inner circle, the ultimate inner ring, using antics that even V for Vendetta would be proud of.
You cut my hair. You tortured me. You tortured me.
All in the service of a pure, disembodied, yet material intellect, or as Lewis so aptly describes, a severed head. Modern readers may not have daily interaction with burning pits, which is the classic conception of hell, but we do know, unfortunately, on a daily basis what it is to deal with a soulless corporation who is trying to ruin society with science, and thereby making something that is utterly unscientific and inefficient to boot.
It should be at least large enough so that nobody quite knows exactly what the other fellow is doing.
Here, somebody, here, you fellas. Denver has run out of wickets. Call the Worldwide Wicket Factory. Have them send 50,000 two-toned wickets at once.
Perhaps Mark would have benefited from a guidebook of sorts. Number 7.
Watch out for their pointy ends!
In that Hideous Strength, Lewis writes how all of history is coming to a point at Edgestow. Good is always getting better, and bad is always getting worse. The possibilities of even apparent neutrality are always diminishing. The whole thing is sorting itself out all the time, coming to a point, getting sharper and harder. Like in the poem about heaven and hell eating into merry Middle-earth from opposite sides. Lewis, of course, doesn't mean a political dichotomy. He has nice creating in controversy at both ends of that spectrum by creating a bunch of fake news stories, allowing the NICE to seize the middle ground and destroy it.
Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone?
So, it's Lewis's theory of metaphysical progression throughout history that I think contradicts Lewis's other premise that history pivots on the moment of the incarnation. That is such a big theme in Lewis that he has a few stories set during Advent.
Thought there was no Christmas in Narnia.
No. Not for a long time. But the hope that you have brought, your majesties, is finally starting to weaken the witch's power.
Thus, the Christian moral code for Merlin, born Anno Domini, would have been the same as it was for Lewis. Though I have my reservations about this historical Merlin's ability to follow the Christian code, I don't think that it's exclusively because he combined Druidic and Christian teachings to bring about Camelot.
I know it sounds a bit bizarre, but in Camelot, that's how conditions are.
If Camelot could have been found in history by combining pagan and pure Christianity, then why not now? I don't discount that morality has developed over time. I think we have a more fuller understanding of mercy, but I think we have lost that philosophical chill with our pagan brethren, which I try to restore on this channel. Number 8, national mythology. The philosophical, not theological, chill that classical Christians seem to have had with their pagan brethren, I think was essential in bringing about the distinct national identities within Christianity. When Logres really dominates Britain, when the goddess Reason, the divine clearness, is really enthroned in France, when the order of heaven is really followed in China, why? Then it will be spring. I like this vision as a starting point for true diversity in unity, yet I see its issues. What about the multinational state, the melting pot, the United States? That perfect Protestant paradise Lewis imagined in Breakston Wood at the beginning of the book is not for everyone, least of all this girl. Yeah. Number 9.
Do you believe in beauty? Yes. Freedom? Yes, of course. Truth? Yes. Love?
The three transcendentals. Since they permeate all forms of human life, it follows that all humans would have opinions on them and that they would differ. In some ways, the Bohemian Revolution of even the 90s was very anti-C.S. Lewis.
Turn away from spirituous.
Pop culture today seems to agree with Frost's premise that everything is just a byproduct of human emotion and chemicals. Hence why we have very little about swearing.
Defecation flows trippingly from the tongue.
Because I'm angry!
But we disagree on the importance of emotion. It's baby boomers, I've heard say, that emotion is irrational and therefore does not matter. As Frost says, it is therefore not surprising that baby boomers gave us the ugliest buildings in all of history and aluminum Christmas trees.
I don't know, Charlie Brown. Remember what Lucy said? This doesn't seem to fit the modern spirit.
Whereas today's culture, drawing from the premise that emotions are everything, uses Occam's razor to arrive at the equally simplistic conclusion that emotions are all important. Therefore, art, for its emotional value, is all important. And it is through art, the aesthetics, that Lewis is able to reach mark. Art, because it lacks a solid definition, is very resilient to the scientificing of reason. Mark's journey towards the truth begins with him coming to appreciate beauty through Dr. Frost's ultimate lack of beauty and human emotion. Number 10.
The party don't start till I walk in.
Merlin rolls up to nice like... Thanks for watching! Please like, share, and subscribe if you want to see more, and leave a comment. Have I said anything new? Do you disagree with what I said? Let me know down below. See you next week. Bye!